Hi there, and welcome to Tea with Bree. I'm your host, Sabrina, aka Bree. Tonight's episode will be episode 1, The Sanctum. The Sanctum is basically the core building where this crime happened to be committed. It starts off with a radiographer who worked at Tweed Heads Hospital in the Northern Rivers of northern New South Wales. He was a highly respected radiographer. This radiographer's name was Victor Elliot. Victor Elliot was a very respected and a very renowned radiographer in his field in that hospital. He decided that he wanted to venture outside of the hospital realm and decided that he wanted to start a side business because he just wanted to have a little bit more of, he wanted to eventually be able to retire and eventually wanted to have a little nest egg that he could retire to. So this was like in the early thousands is when this event happened. We'll be able to get the date for you. This event occurred on the 26th of May in the year 2000. He was fatefully shot out the front of the establishment, and how we get to that place is through a very tumultuous and through a very tumultuous engagement. This is episode 1, so you're gonna have to just stick with me for a little bit. So basically, Victor Elliot was at the establishment at the day in question, on that date, and he was basically getting ready to open the establishment. It hadn't been opened. He was putting everything in its final place and making sure that everything was there, so then when the doors opened, it was all ready to go. But what happened on that fateful day is that he got into an altercation out the front of the Sanctum building in Shindra, and then a scuffle occurred, which then resulted in him being murdered. He was shot. I don't know if it was at point blank, but I haven't been able to find those particulars. But I do know that the shot is what resulted in his ultimate demise. It took 6 years for anyone to be. It took 6 years after the event for anyone to be convicted. So it was unsolved for quite so many years after. He was loved and adored by many. So him losing his life that day was unheard of in his circle and his community of people that he associated with. He was quite a revered radiographer. He was quite the up and coming person to be around. So it was kind of a little bit strange that this person would be murdered out the front of a building that hadn't opened yet. That was kind of like in its days of being opened. So when that event happened, it kind of like people turned up to the scene, and it kind of went cold for many years. It was cold. There was whispers and talks about it because being the building of what the building actually was, which was a brothel that was opening in Shindra, there was talks that it may have been from a rival brothel as such, but so when the news broke about this event, it was quite a shock to everybody because he was such a loved man. But yeah, so during the time before, he'd had a business partner, and his virtually what had happened was he had this business partner, and the business partner and him didn't quite see eye to eye with things. Like Victor wanted to go down one particular path, but this other business partner wanted to go down another path. They then parted ways. That was all good and done. And Victor had hired a receptionist at the time, who was his partner, his girlfriend at the time. I am not going to mention her name, even though it has been mentioned. Her name is Dallas Cameron. Dallas Cameron, basically, she was his confidant. She was everything to Victor. She basically was going to be taking care of the day-to-day workings of inside the establishment. So she was the go-to person for this establishment. But what had happened was that the partner didn't agree to having her in, didn't agree to it being like a business of like pleasure and business for Victor. I guess having everything close to his network and thing, and having everything there, like it was definitely Victor's baby. He definitely loved this business and put everything into it. Put his blood, sweat and tears into it. Ultimately, and virtually, his blood was spilled on the driveway out the front of this building. So it in essence has his blood in the building. Many have actually stated that the building is haunted. I have not come across anyone with credible evidence of that, but it would be interesting though to go down that track for any ghost hunters out there. But yeah, so that being said, the business partner under it all didn't particularly like Dallas working in the position that she was working in. Dallas, however, was an absolute amazing person. She basically wanted the best for Victor. Basically wanted to go down the same path as him. Had the same goals in sight for the ultimate building, for the ultimate establishment, and how it was going to be run, and that it was going to be the first of its kind with how it was going to be run. Also, sadly, Victor's dream never got to be lived in the way that he would have designed it. It was tried at one stage. I am gathering that it was tried because the establishment was actually opened at like a portion of time. I think that somebody else had brought it. I don't quote me on that, but I am just going by what the building was in the write-ups of it. And the fact that I have heard it is alleged that Dallas had worked as the receptionist after it had opened. So she continued on with Victor's vision as such, because she absolutely adored him and wanted his vision to live out even after death. So when he died, it was kind of like a bit of a shock to the system, a bit of a shock to the community, because this radiographer, who everybody loved and adored, had perished. So it became a who did it? Who was it that actually shot Victor Elliot? This took on a 6-year wait until somebody was actually convicted of his murder. All of his business associates were brought into play. All of his all of his inner circle was brought into play, because it was, people thought it was a drug deal gone wrong. People thought that it was like, may have been bikie related, may have been related to a brothel war with another brothel. It was just countless things went all over the shop. So all this, and it was quite something that would take a very long time for these things to come out. So what had happened was his business partner at the time had actually asked two friends of his to go and mess him around, as in use him as like a punching bag to get money out of him, because in his head Victor owed him. So during that kerfuffle, he was not meant to be shot. He was not meant to die in that way. But because Victor fought back that day, that led to his ultimate demise. So these two people that had been hired were basically not in the right frame of mind. It has been written that they were on substances at the time, and they took a little bit too far. They took it a little bit too far. They are now, I'm just checking facts. I don't want to read anything that's not fact. So Victor Elliot was killed by a 32-year-old Queenslander named Michael Anthony Graup. He had been arrested in Parramatta for the murder of Victor Elliot. He was the person who ultimately brought down Victor Elliot in his ultimate demise. He calculated this. He calculated everything. Made sure that everything was. Made sure he. Read this. Sorry, I am reading this as I go as well, because it's kind of a little bit. It's kind of a lot of information to unpack here. So the people that brought his ultimate demise was Michael Graup and Dale Oots, who had been hired to give him a scare by his former business partner. His former business partner's name is Daniel Clayton Scott. So Daniel Clayton Scott organised for Michael Graup and Dale Oots to ultimately bring down the demise of Victor Elliot. I'm sorry about how all over the shop I am today with this. It's my first podcast, so please hold on to me. But yeah, so they're the people that brought down his ultimate demise. It was very, very sad for the community the day that he was gone. So basically these two ex-army officers, there we go, wearing balaclavas, who they virtually tried to force him to go away in a getaway car, which was a four-wheel drive. And it was a stolen military four-wheel drive that he was being forced to kind of go into. And it didn't ultimately go that way. He was going to be held for ransom. I am gathering that there was some sort of holding him for ransom or beating him around the bush until he, gave them until Daniel had basically gotten what he wanted out of the situation, which was ultimately money. And I guess he wanted it all. If he couldn't have any part of the business, if he couldn't have the way that he wanted the Sanctum to go, well, then nobody was going to have the Sanctum. It was. So basically, he had told these two assailants that he wanted to. That basically Victor Elliot had $500,000 on the property, and that is what they were there to get, was $500,000. So this is what it all boiled down to, was $500,000 for a life. It is quite sad to actually think that these people went to the great lengths for just 500,000. So that's what Victor Elliot's life was virtually worth at the end of the day. Sorry, I get a little bit emotional with this sort of stuff. I guess feeling the emotion from the actual victim themselves is, my heart just goes out to his family. And if anyone is currently living as well, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. If I didn't give the story justice enough, please reach out to me, and I can do a take 2 of the episode, and I can share more information on his life, and anything like that. The building, since Victor had the building, has been shrouded in a lot of controversy itself, and a lot of criminal activity has flowed through those doors since that time. I am not going to name anybody on those lists. I'm sure that if you went digging hard enough, you'd be able to find out the information yourself. But that's a story for another time. And I am your host, Bree, and welcome to the tea.